Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing? It is another fantastic Tuesday, and it's gorgeous here in Austin, Texas. A little chilly, but it's warming up quick. It was just in the 30s last week. It's supposed to be 84 this Thursday. Texas is crazy, and Austin is definitely one of them. So thanks for tuning in for all of you guys. Thanks, Moises. Good to see you. Good to see you, Melissa. Always good to see all you guys. And we have a killer show lined up for you guys today. I am super, super excited for our guest that's going to be joining us. I was fortunate to get to meet this young lady in the DTDW event out of Scottsdale, Arizona, which was right at the end of January, a little less than a month ago. Was super impressed, not only with her professionalism and her skill set speaking from stage, which is a public speaker. I'm always attracted to that stuff, but also her topic, her level of knowledge on it, and I'm super excited for us to be able to bring it to you guys today. So look forward to that. But as always, I do want to mention that this show is sponsored by MetaZeus. Man, MetaZeus is a phenomenal tool out there for you guys that are in the Medicare Advantage and prescription drug world, because it's going to allow you to monitor your business real time. You've seen it circulating around the groups, right? If you're out there doing MA business and PDP business, you need to get in touch with this tool, because it'll not only let you monitor your business and look for flips, but it helps you figure out who's qualified for low-income subsidy stuff as well. So in case you overlooked that, it's a great tool. You can realize, hey, this is one of my clients that qualifies for LIS. Let me help them out a little more. So check with Evan McGuffey in the group if you're looking for a demo, and we'll make sure that the link is in the comments if you want to check it out as well. But it's a great tool. I use it daily to monitor our book and our business, and absolutely love it. All you need is their Medicare number and their date of birth. If you got that much info, you can use this, and it's a great system to help you build your business. But moving along, I do have some news for you guys that I want to run through real quick. Let me get this stuff shared on the screen for you. Boom. And first up to bat is right here from Healthcare Finance. CMS issues guidance on allowing Medicare beneficiaries to pay for their monthly prescription costs, their RX costs monthly. And you may have heard of this. I'm not sure. It was, I believe this was part of the Inflation Reduction Act, but they created a Medicare prescription payment plan, right? And it's basically a suite. It's part of a suite of provisions aimed at lowering prescription drug costs. And I've talked about this quite a bit, right? But let's look a little bit at this real quick. And I'm just going to point out a couple of key things. Number one, CMS pointed to instances in which the law is helping to lower costs for Medicare beneficiaries. On January 1, the law expanded eligibility for the low-income subsidy program under Medicare Part D. Nearly 300,000 people with low and modest incomes currently enrolled are now benefiting from the program's expansion, and 3 million people are eligible but not enrolled. 3 million people out there eligible for this program, but not enrolled. Also on January 1, for some people enrolled in Medicare Part D who have very high drug costs, their out-of-pocket costs will be capped at about $3,300 to $3,800 for the first time. The Medicare prescription payment plan complements these provisions by allowing individuals to spread their spending over the year rather than paying the total out-of-pocket up front. So instead of getting hit with one big fat bill, they can run it like a credit card, and they can spread those payments out. But let's take a look at the larger trend right down here. So says this year, I want to pick up right here. This year, changes to the Medicare Part D benefit will include the elimination of the 5% coinsurance requirement for Part D enrollees, with Part D plans now paying 20% of the total drug cost in the catastrophic phase, up from 15. So I want to read that again to make sure you understand what they're saying. Instead of the drug plan, right? SilverScript, Humana, whoever the drug plan is, instead of them paying 15% of the catastrophic cost when someone hits catastrophic level, they're now having to pay 20%. So the Part D plan, the carrier, is paying more, right? Their coinsurance is now more. Beginning in 2025, Medicare's catastrophic drug coverage will entail Part D plans and drug manufacturers assuming a larger share of the cost again, as Medicare's portion decreases from 80% to 20% for brand name drugs and 80% to 40% for generics. So currently, Medicare is covering 80% of the cost for a brand name prescription. And they're saying no longer are we going to be on the hook for that much. Starting next year, we will only be on the hook for 20% of the cost of brand name drugs and 40% for generics, which means who's covering those extra costs? Well, the carrier, the insurer, the Part D plan, and certainly some of that is coming out of the pharmaceutical company or the PBM. Well, as I've said before, because the cost for prescription refills is going down and it's getting passed back to the insurer is going to push it right through to the client, your client, and they're going to do it in the form of higher premiums. We've already seen it start, and it's going to happen more. The shift aims to address rising concerns of Medicare's escalating reinsurance payments for Part D plans, which accounted for nearly half of total Part D spending in 2022, right? While also requiring Part D plans to cover 60% of cost above the cap and maintaining a 20% price reduction. So again, costs are getting pushed back to the insurance carrier to cover these Part D costs that Medicare is no longer going to pay. So they're going to push it through into premiums. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And if you don't believe me, wait till we get a little further into this segment. So this was their guidance. This was an article that covered it in Healthcare Finance. You can actually find also in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and I'll make sure this stuff is in the group, is the actual link from HHS and CMS. So it's pretty much everything that I just said. And if you scroll further down, they actually have links to their fact sheets and everything. I'll get this stuff in the group. You guys can check it out a little closer. But moving along, this just came out from Modern Healthcare. This is Medicare Advantage 2024 enrollment winners and losers. And Jared Strzok was actually just talking about this in one of the other groups, pointing out some of the enrollment numbers that came in for 2024. And let's take a look at them real quick. Scrolling down, I'm not going to go through all the text. We're basically going to look at these graphs because they tell you everything you need to know. Medicare Advantage enrollment for 2024. This is growth. This isn't the number of enrollments. This is the change in enrollments, right? So Aetna had a growth of 533,000 new enrollments in addition to the people they're already working with. United Healthcare had a growth of 149,000 new enrollments and so forth. And you can look down at the bottom and see that Centene lost 141,000 members. You think you're having a problem with retention. How would you feel if you woke up one day and you lost 141,000 members in your book? Well, you probably wouldn't even have a book anymore. Let's be honest. So, and again, this graph is basically the exact same thing for the most part, right? We're seeing Aetna with the highest growth in total enrollment. Pretty amazing. And the reason I point that out is because of this. Next little article here. And this is comes from AHIP, their news site, etc. But it says a bipartisan group of senators to CMS, hey, protect our Medicare Advantage for seniors, right? And they go on to say, hey, look, we got to keep Medicare Advantage strong for today and tomorrow, right? So they write this letter, and this is a bipartisan group, right? This is Democrats and Republicans getting together to tell CMS, please keep Medicare Advantage strong because our seniors need it. So they write, hey, we write to express our bipartisan support for the Medicare Advantage program and the healthcare coverage it provides to over 32 million seniors and individuals with disabilities. The number of Americans who choose Medicare Advantage continues to grow each year, and Medicare Advantage now serves over half of all Medicare eligible individuals, right? And they go on and said to their support, they're like, look, it's an affordable choice for Americans, right? It addresses the needs of an increasingly diverse population, and you can even download the letter here. I'll get this article in the group too. So you have a bunch of seniors, and why would they say that? Well, because there are some budget issues on the block, right? And there's an argument right now, hey, do we need to reduce the government subsidy to Medicare Advantage plans, or should we increase it? Where are we at? And if you look at just this piece of information, right, the winners and losers, where Aetna is doing 533,000 new enrollments, you would think, what's the problem there, right? Well, here's what the problem is. Starts right here also in Modern Healthcare. Aetna forecasts higher Medicare Advantage costs. And if we cruise into this article, we will see right here that Medicare Advantage claims for outpatient hip and knee procedures, supplemental services, dental and vision care, respiratory essential virus vaccinations drove higher than projected medical spending. CVS Health reported that Aetna's medical loss ratio increased 2.7% to 88.5 for the fourth quarter and 2.4 to 86% for the full year. So they're running an 86% loss ratio. If you remember when they came out with the ACA Act, and I believe it was specifically in that bill if it wasn't one of the previous ones or adjacent ones, but they ruled that these plans have to keep a medical loss ratio no lower than 85%, as I remember. And so they're running pretty right on top of it, but they're a little high, and they're saying, hey, look, it's pushing up to 88%, which means it's cutting into their profits. So they're not earning as much money, they're not growing as much, and their profit margins are going down, which it says right here. They've reduced their earnings per share from 7.26 down to 7.06. We can continue to look in this, but all we're going to see is that we have a reduction in revenue to Aetna, even though they put on 533,000 new members. Molina jumping on that same bandwagon. Hey, we're reporting Medicare Advantage challenges too, right? Molina Healthcare missed its profitability target for Medicare Advantage last year because medical costs spiked, right? This makes Molina the latest insurance carrier to report ballooning Medicare Advantage expenses during the closing months of last year, following sector leaders, UHC, et cetera, et cetera. Check out Molina's Medicare loss or medical loss ratio. Blow. The medical loss ratio for Molina Medicare Advantage plans increased 1.6% to 93.3% during the fourth quarter, 2.5% to 90.7%. So they're running 5 points above that 85% threshold at 90%. And their Medicare Advantage ended up growing 10%. So they had a 10% growth in membership, but a loss in profitability due to spiked medical cost. And they're not alone. This next one here, Medicare Advantage provider benefit cuts may follow rate reduction. And this is a big part of what I've been talking about. Number one, we have the Inflation Reduction Act that's driving up the cost of prescriptions to the insurer, right? They're going to pass those through to the client. So we're seeing Part D premiums go up. We're likely going to see Medicare Advantage premiums start to go up. They definitely can go up from zero. There's nowhere up to go from there. But we may also see some benefit cuts, right? And some of these supplemental benefits. But it depends. Are we going to get an increase or are we going to get a reduction this year? We've been getting increases on the Medicare Advantage subsidy since 2014. So 10 years straight, every year, the subsidy for Medicare Advantage plans from CMS to these private insurers has gone up. And that's why we've seen such growth in footprint, such growth in enrollment, growth in commissions, growth in benefits, et cetera. But now they're looking at possibly cutting a little bit of it. And it's not a big reduction, right? So it says here, Medicare Advantage insurers are likely to respond to a modest rate cut next year by adjusting premiums, benefits, provider reimbursements, making other moves to emphasize profitability. And it says, although that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has downplayed the effect of its proposed 0.16% reduction in the MA benchmark rate for 2025. The rule last Wednesday is the latest in a string of policies that Medicare insurers and their investors wary about the program. So you can cruise on through here and talk about it or look through some of it. They are also saying, and this is a little different viewpoint, TD Cowen, this guy is, I lost his title. He is some kind of, it works with Bloomberg Intelligence. I apologize. So TD Cowen noted that CMS has offered higher payments and final rules than initially proposed for 5 consecutive years. So he's saying the last 5 years, they proposed this number, but they end up implementing an even higher number. And that is definitely true. So for 10 years, we've seen nothing but increases. And the last 5, they said, well, we're going to give them this much, but no, they're giving them more. And he goes on to say that based on that trend, the investment bank predicts that Medicare Advantage benchmark rates will be 0.8% more next year. So he's saying that, hey, based on the trends and based on how Medicare has been proposing this and then doing this, we're actually going to see about a 0.8% increase next year, not the projected 0.16% decrease. Nevertheless, he does expect rising costs and a decelerating population growth will depress profitability from the high double digits to low single digits over time. And as we know, CMS plans to issue that Medicare Advantage final rule by April 1st. So we got a little over a month, right? And we will find out, hey, are we getting an increase this year? Are we getting a decrease? And what size is it going to be, right? And that's going to have a big play in all of these carriers that are saying, hey, we're hitting spiked medical costs. It's cutting into our profitability. We're exceeding way above that 85% MLR threshold. Like, we need some help. And so that goes back to that article that I put up earlier about that bipartisan group that is saying, hey, we need to strengthen Medicare Advantage because they are struggling with profitability. If they struggle with profitability, guess what? All of that ends up affecting the senior, the Medicare beneficiary, whether it be through increased premiums, increased costs, right? Increased co-insurances, limited benefits, etc. And then we go on for this one final one, and we will jump into the show today. This is out of Market Beat. So all of those, a lot of those carriers that I just talked about, they are complaining about high medical cost, right? And loss in profitability. And then the title of this one says, can United Health Group afford to keep Medicare Advantage plans? So if you look through this one here real quick, it is going to tell you, remind where my spot is. It's going to go through quite a bit. Number one, it's going to say that, hey, Medicare Advantage organizations routinely, no, I apologize. I lost my place here. Here we go. Okay. So number one, the Humana bombshell, right? And I mentioned this earlier a little bit, but health insurers are feeling the pinch from the Medicare Advantage plan population. And Humana dropped a big bombshell when they said, hey, even though they're number two, right, they're the second largest insurer in the Medicare Advantage world, their Q4 earnings report had a drastic drop, right? And Humana, and it says that Humana went on to drastically lower its 2024-2025 forecast by even 50 and 70%. So they are seeing a drop in profitability, right? They're talking about that, the changing landscape, even though here it's talking about Aetna, even though Aetna had a huge growth rate in membership, they're seeing lower profitabilities. We're seeing Cigna sell out of the Medicare Advantage world. And then it says, will the other shoe drop? This is the real crux of the article. Since Humana is the second largest Medicare Advantage insurer in the U.S., logic would dictate that the top Medicare Advantage insurer, United Health Group, must be affected by all of these things too. They must be affected by the spike in medical costs. They must be affected by the rise in their MLR ratio, reducing their profitability. However, it says here, that does not seem to be the case, right? Although they did report earlier than Humana. This begs the question as to whether Humana is the sole loser for Medicare Advantage, which it's obviously not, or are they just ahead of the curve in lowering their forecast for future predictions? And United Healthcare investors can expect the other shoe to drop, right? So they're basically saying, how come United Healthcare is not one of the carriers complaining? They only saw like a 1.5% growth rate in their membership, but they're maintaining an excellent MLR ratio, right? They are actually right at that 85%. So they're saying, hey, if everybody else is complaining, shouldn't United Healthcare be too? But they haven't been, and they keep doing their thing. And then, of course, it finalizes with the statement of, should you invest money in United Health Group right now? Because that's where it's from, Market Beat. But pretty interesting stuff there in the Medicare Advantage world, I thought. So I hope you guys got some news out of that. I will put these articles, at least some of them, in the group that you can check out. Feel free to comment on them, share them, etc. And again, thank you guys for tuning in. So I'm super excited to get our guest on here, and we're going to dive in. Queue up your questions. This is going to be a great episode. Please give me a warm welcome from Ms. Stacy Raske. How are you today?
Recovering from a cold.
Understood. Understood. Well, you don't
But
look it. You look great.
good overall. Yes. Thank you for, little effort goes a long way, right?
Absolutely.
So I was like, okay, I got to at least not look like how I feel.
Absolutely. Understood. Well, I certainly appreciate you taking some time to jump on the show. I know you're a very busy gal out there doing your influential activation, which we will definitely talk about what that means. But real quick, I just, are you, number one question, just real quick, are you in the insurance world? Are you an insurance agent?
No, I
No,
am
right.
not. I
Uh,
serve those who are, though. I've had
yes, you are.
quite a few clients in that space over the decade or so that I've been a coach and mentor.
Correct, which is exactly why I got you on the show. I obviously we met at the DTDW in Scottsdale. Outstanding. I love your message. And I just want real quick before we just dive into the crux of everything, just take a moment to introduce yourself to our group. We got about 7,600 insurance agents in here, independent business owners, agency owners, yada, yada, yada. Tell them a little about who you are and kind of your story and maybe what you do.
Yeah. The Cliffs Notes version is best-selling author, speaker, podcast host, Iraq War veteran, badass biker chick. I've got my motorcycle.
I like that.
Yeah, leadership mentor, peak performance and executive coach, and systems strategist. Everything I focus on is about efficiency and optimization. So I help visionary entrepreneurs and organizations systematize and strategize to be able to elevate their performance, people, and profit.
Excellent. I love it. Iraq war veteran. Thank you for your service. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I could go a whole nother direction with that, but we're not. That's not that time. It's not that kind of show. It's not that kind of show. But I want to dive right in. And this is a question that this is a post that keeps popping up in my Facebook feed. And it's funny to me, and it's an ad post, but it keeps getting advertised to me. And I'm like, what the hell does Facebook know about me? I know they have a good algorithm. I know that if I go jump online and look at some shoes, some red shoes on some other website, that eventually Facebook is going to start showing me red shoes real quick. But this one kind of threw me off. And I'm going to put it on the screen, but it says that procrastination is not laziness. It's a depression response. I'm curious to what you would say.
So there's an agree and a disagree. So,
excellent.
There is, yes, it is a depression response. However, everything that I am all about is about get to the root and understanding that depression is still one of the symptoms that is part of our stress response, AKA trauma response. And so, going through these large swings and experiences with our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial well-being are all consequences of this stress response. And so procrastination is 100% a symptom of that stress response or trauma response. And we're actually going to get into that today.
Excellent. Well, I just want to go ahead and dive in then. Because that was what I remember when I'm remembering back at your talk. I remember looking at like, hey, that's what you did so well is you addressed all the little symptoms or all of the behaviors that we take on and how different stress expresses through us, if I'm saying that right, through these different indicators.
Absolutely. And, at the end of the day, I everything that I do is really from that behaviorist perspective. It's focusing on the behavior, and we'll really get into what's driving the behavior in the training today.
Awesome. Well, let's jump in. I see you have something you'd like to put on. I'm going to add it to the stage. Fantastic. And we're going to let you jump from here for a bit.
Awesome. So, it's in order to save time for Q&A, we're going to do the slightly condensed version so we can be respectful of everybody's time. So in February of 2003, I was sent to Kuwait and actually was on the front lines when we invaded Iraq in March of 2003. And during that time, I had the opportunity to lead quite a few rescue missions. And one of the last ones that we did, we were recovering one of our platoons from out in the middle of the desert and coming back. And this was still very early on. So there was a lot of hostile activity happening. And there were quite a few of the convoy ambushes and things that were going on during that time. And really that first 6 months, that's when it got the most press. And as I focus on leading this mission, I'm driving the lead vehicle. Everybody is following what decisions I make. And this is a survival situation. So we end up coming back and we end up hitting a roadblock. And it was actually designed for an ambush. And so coming around the corner, instantly I see that our path is blocked. And so I have to make that split-second decision of how do I get myself and these 20 vehicles out of the way quickly so that nobody gets hurt. And had to go into that survival mode, make that decision, and take action right away. And thankfully, we were able to avoid the ambush, get everybody back, and everybody survived unharmed and very minimal damage to our vehicles. Now, this is a situation where being in that survival brain, that stress response actually did its job. This was life or death. This was absolutely, do or die situation where that needed to kick in and do its job. The problem was after I got out of the military, it was a long 10 years before I learned how to get out of that survival brain. And especially when I got into entrepreneurship. So we're going to talk a lot about that survival brain today. And it took a lot of education and training. And so that is what I'm going to share with you today, this broken down bite-sized way for you to shift out of survival. And because that's what activates the sabotage cycles that are keeping you stuck. Now, most of you, we're still early in the year. So we've got those big goals that we're planning, all the, the new business lines, all the new lead generation, all the new ways that you're going to create more sales, more revenue, more clients, improve LTV, all of that stuff. And I'm here to tell you absolutely none of that will determine your success. None of that. That is 100% your ceiling. But your ceiling doesn't determine your success. It's actually the floor. And so often as entrepreneurs and business owners, we focus on raising the ceiling. How can I go bigger, do more, experience more, hit the big goals? But we never focus on what actually determines your success, and it's raising your floor. It's the behaviors the actions you're taking absolutely every day that actually determine your success. And if we don't put in the effort to raise the floor, you will always fall to that lowest standard. And for anybody who's struggling with sabotage, that's actually your lowest standard. It is your lowest acceptable default behavior that is keeping you stuck. And so what's actually happening here is the real problem. And the real problem is you're getting hijacked. Your brain is hijacking you for survival. And it's the same thing that happens every single day. When you elevate your stress, your body, your brain, your primitive brain hijacks you to take over because it's like, whoa, are you being chased by the saber-toothed tiger? I need to default to a behavior that I know will keep me safe and alive. And it doesn't matter if that behavior is serving you or serving your goals. All your brain and your body know is it kept you alive at least once. And the truth is that all of these cycles that are happening, right, are daily because I don't know if you got the memo or not. I certainly didn't. When I started my business, I didn't know that it was going to be this constant stream of triggers of all the things, because business ownership is unsafe and uncertain. It's constantly outside of your comfort zone every single day. So all your brain is going into is like crisis and survival. And so that whole 10 years that I spent learning how to recover from post-traumatic stress and childhood trauma and all of this stuff, as soon as I started a business, it was like, oh, wait, why do I feel like I'm starting all over again? Oh, yeah, constantly uncomfortable. Anybody else? Throw that in the comments if you know that experience. You're like, yep, every day I'm doing something new.
Yes.
Right? So that is all of those symptoms you're seeing externally, right? So you're seeing these challenges with your team, challenges with cash flow, challenges finding leads, whatever the challenges are that you're experiencing. Or sometimes the biggest challenge is like, oh my gosh, nothing's getting in my way more than myself. If you see yourself as the biggest challenge, all of those external symptoms, all of those external battles you're fighting are really just symptoms of this war you're waging with yourself. And it's this war between survive and thrive. Are you going to be in survival mode and default into the safety and sabotage? Or can you learn to hijack back your brain and get into thrive and the success that you want to create? So that's what we are going to continue jumping into. And so the root here is everything is about this current programming. There is a default within your system that's consistently overriding your goals. It doesn't matter how big and amazing those goals are, that you'll always default to this programming. That's why this lowest standard, this floor, if we don't put the effort into raising the floor, the experience becomes one step forward. You raise the ceiling, 2 steps back when you fall back down to the old habits. And what's interesting is because of this sense of discomfort and uncertainty, we will actually change our lives to accommodate our programming. And I see this all the time when I'm working with entrepreneurs, executives, founders, is they've actually curated their life to keep them stuck. They've curated their business and their relationships and all of the behaviors to keep themselves stuck, and they don't even realize it. So that floor is what's driving the daily habits and behaviors. If you're not shifting what is creating this response, you're always going to be fighting the behaviors. There's neural pathways that are pre-programmed. We've always been doing it the same way. And so when you're trying to shift it, it feels hard and requires conscious effort. All of it is because you've got this super highway that you're learning how to reprogram.
Yes. I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no.
I was noticing that this morning with me. Like we've talked about this, but I'm doing my own little 75-day challenge, right, to try to improve, to try to raise my floor. Let's be honest. I'm trying to raise my floor, right? I'm working out daily, drinking juice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Getting up much earlier than I normally do because I'm more of a night owl, so I don't like to get up super early. But like this morning was one of those days. Like I've done this for 50 days in a row already successfully, but even on day 50, it's still not habit.
Yeah.
I still have to consciously push myself to get the hell out of bed and make a choice. Nope, go to the gym, drink your juice, bust your ass, achieve your goals.
Mm-hmm. You're looking at the neural pathways that have been reinforced for a lifetime.
Right.
This starts as that super highway. And when you're making the changes, you're literally going through the jungle and clearing out the jungle to make a road that starts as like a mud path. And then eventually, if you keep making conscious choices to continue going down this new pathway over time, that becomes the gravel road, that becomes the paved one-laner, that becomes the 4-lane road, that becomes the super highway when you continue reinforcing the new behavior and the new neural pathways and allowing the old ones to start to disintegrate. So the old ones become or go from the superhighway and eventually become the dirt road less traveled. But it's understanding that every time that your primitive brain is hijacking you and taking you through this old programming, there's a reason that it's there. It helped you survive childhood, because all we're meant to do is survive childhood and get to reproductive years, right? So it's literally helping you adapt to real or perceived threats growing up. You know, whether it's real trauma in terms of like a big T trauma, what a lot of people don't realize is they have these traumatic childhood experiences just from living life. You can come from the best families under the sun. This is not trauma comparison. What is happening is how it encoded a response. That's all that matters. Is it encoded a response where you had changed your behavior to adapt or accommodate to something external? And that's what you've consistently done to survive. And now it's like, hey, this is not serving me in life or success. So what we see at the top of the iceberg are the actions, right? We see the behaviors we're taking. And then if you really go above the iceberg, you're going to see the consequences of those behaviors, such as your bank account. But what drives the actions are your thoughts. What drives the thoughts are your feelings. And what drives the feelings are your beliefs. And your beliefs are your worldview. And if you're constantly in survival mode, your worldview has a very negative perspective, right? It's, what do I need to do to get through? And with that negative perspective, that drives the feelings. Now, the feelings are the stories and meaning you assign to an emotional response. So the emotion is fleeting. It's the initial triggered response. Physical, somewhere we have an experience of something happens. We have that stress response. Now we've got this whole internal dialogue, this story, this meaning we assign that drives the thoughts, which now become the story we're saying in our head that says, ooh, who am I to do that? Or, oh my gosh, somebody reschedules and, we assign this meaning of rejection, or canceling or whatever it is, right? All the BS we tell each other or tell ourselves. And those thoughts then drive the actions, which means, well, let me do this prep purgatory stuff over here and get ready, rather than actually following up with the leads that is going to help me actually hit my goals, right? And so you have to pick your brain when you're looking at the behaviors that you want to elicit from yourself. Do you want to be in survival mode, which is always on the defensive, right? For those of you who are great at putting out fires all the time, reactive. The problem is that survival brain gives you this tunnel vision, so you're actually blind to opportunities coming in because you're like, nope, this is it. I'm so singularly focused. It's got that negative perspective that functions in fear and scarcity. And it's exhausting. Constantly being in this hyper-vigilant stress response state. And at the end of the day, this is where you end up always being alone and feeling alone. If you are an entrepreneur, like most of us, right, where you always feel alone because you're like, wow, nobody gets me in my circles. There's a certain reason to that. And it's why we gravitate towards groups like this. And so you'll end up doing the whole whatever, I'll just do it myself. versus being in that thrive mind where now you're actually working on the offense and building the life and business that you want, being proactive. This is where you're able to tap into that visionary, creative problem solving and have this positive perspective, functioning from ease and abundance. You're functioning in this place that everything's really energizing you. And it's all about leverage because you see the value in the experience of collaboration and working with your team. Now, the interesting thing is you cannot be in a state of reaction and a state of action at the same time. It's one or the other. So if you're constantly in this reactive space of something happens in the present moment, there's that trigger, you go back to the past. Remember, our primitive brain wants to say, whoa, has something like this happened before? What was the behavior that allowed me to survive that? Right? So we're constantly going into the past and we're reacting this behavior of control issues, sabotage, avoidance, all the stuff we're going to get into. And you bring that into the present. But when you're actually taking the actions that you want to create that future you desire, those amazing goals, you're actually bringing that future vision closer to your present. But if you're always in this reactive state, you're getting really close to this past and you're staying stuck in this reactive cycle, this survival, and you're actually pushing your goals further away. You know, that's why things feel so hard. Or that experience of doing all of this work and you're exhausted at the end of the day and you're like, man, I didn't get anything done that I wanted to, right? Or putting so much into growing your business and having no ROI to show for it. It was my first 3 years in business. It was like a hobby. I'm like, why am I burned out and like my bank account's on E?
Yes.
Right?
You actually made a post on that recently. You said that right there.
Right? It is, right? And so instead of what people think is high performance, it's really just this high functioning, which that high functioning is this survival behavior that's keeping you stuck, but it's done in a way where you were able to get that return on investment of that energy or that behavior.
Can you maybe give us a little more simplified example of the difference between high performance and high functioning?
I will, but it'll
Like
be
a real world example.
after I get into the symptoms. Yeah.
Solid,
because
solid.
that way it'll be a better context and frame of reference. So when you're going into your day and going into your business, if you think you're from this expansive goal-based strategy, but really you're functioning from survival, you have to recognize that you're always playing defense, never offense. And a little click happy here. You're never playing to win, only not to lose. And that is a very different way in terms of approaching life, business, success as a whole. That's a completely different energy, emotion, and mindset if I'm simply showing up not to lose. It's hard to get your goals that way. So what ends up showing up when we're constantly in this survival mode are these sabotaging behaviors. And most of us know these sabotaging behaviors as control issues, but there's a lot of control issues that I bring up that are a lot of people are like, wait, I didn't even know that was a control issue. And I'm like, yeah, it is. So most of us know perfection. We're trying to control really what other people think about us in terms of the delivery of the product. Procrastination is we don't have a perfect amount of time or resources, or again, it's just not quite perfect enough to call done. Expectations is trying to control things and people in your head. Impatience, controlling timeline. Judgment is controlling, really pre-rejecting or controlling what other people think about you, not allowing them the opportunity to judge you. Dishonesty is controlling information. Distrust is now controlling connection with others. And this is a big one. Hustle is actually trying to control outcomes that are outside of your control. Now, I always ask this question, are you a giver? Do you consider yourself a really giving person? You like doing things for people, for your clients, all of that stuff. If you're a giver, but when I'm always like, hey, and who's still great at receiving, all the hands go down. So are you good at giving? But if you're not good at receiving, your giving just became a control issue. Because if you're blocking other people from the experience of giving to you because you are not open to receive help, resources, whatever, right? You now turned giving into a control issue. So for me, I did a lot of work over the years to raise my ceiling, right? I talked about that first 10 years after getting out of the military. I mean, I went hard into raising the ceiling. I went back to college. I graduated valedictorian, summa cum laude, all the honors societies, did all the stuff as a non-traditional student, got the amazing corporate job with all the benefits, the six-figure income, all of those things that everybody says you should do. But I never raised my floor. So
come on, man. That ain't you.
That is 100%
That's not
me.
you.
That is 100% me.
You AI Photoshop those images.
I wish.
Come on.
I wish. So I never raised my floor. So what happened was, despite doing all those big goals, buy the house and the nice cars and the vacations and all of the stuff that we did to live this amazing, quote unquote, dream life, because I never raised my floor, I always defaulted to numbing out with food, drugs, alcohol, work, social media, television, all of the things to avoid myself and what I was feeling inside, on top of rejection of my truth and building this life of shoulds. But this dream life was my prison because I never built it for me. I was always wearing the mask of who I should be. And so I end up weighing twice as much as I do now, a ton of health issues. And ultimately at my rock bottom, my marriage was in shambles. I'd lost my corporate career and I was at my rock bottom. And it was the last time that I was suicidal. And thankfully, when I came out of it, the lesson that I learned was I'm done trying to control anything other than myself. So in a year, I lost over 100 pounds and ultimately ended up losing half my body weight, got off all my meds, got healthy, and saved my marriage, and actually inspired me to finally follow my true path, which was entrepreneurship, and ultimately helping other people do, be, have, and experience their version of the dream lifestyle that I was finally giving myself permission to live. And so when you get into understanding these control issues, you have to really recognize their connection to this stress response, because that's the survival. It is stress response, 100%. And so flight, right? We know fight, flight, freeze, or fawn is what we're getting into, but how does this show up in your day-to-day? So flight is the, oh, something didn't work or chaos or whatever. Let me go right into work, right? Right into hustle. It's the overthinking, the anxiety, the restlessness, squirrel, shiny object, right? And the perfection. So we've got the fight. Now, this is where we get into really hardcore controlling. I'll do it myself. Explosive, impulsive, competitive, aggressive, and then even being that bully. Right? If you end up steamrolling your team, steamrolling your spouse, I think I just did a post about that yesterday, not recognizing how I was steamrolling my spouse, a lesson I learned last year, but even being the bully to yourself in your head, right? So that fight is strong. Freeze indecisive, the analysis paralysis, the isolating, the avoidance, checking out, and the procrastination. So to answer the opening question about procrastination, right? This is where freeze, why it looks like depression, right? We just completely shut down. And so it's the stress response creating this freeze. And so we literally are like in that depressed state. And then fawn. This is a tricky one. Most people don't even realize, but this is the people pleasers. If you're yesing everyone and have no boundaries, overwhelm, maxed out, right? Because you're overly available, overgiving, overserving. If you are overly available to your clients, you have put them in the power position and not you. And so it fuels the doubt, and the fawning is searching for the rescuer. And this is a big one because people are like, I don't look for a rescuer. And I'm like, well, if you've ever been in a crisis and you threw money at a problem and hired a service provider to help you and it totally turned out horrible, yeah, it's an expensive lesson and you were looking for them to rescue you. Or we do the same thing when hiring the wrong people. You know, you hire that friend or that family member because you're in a crisis and you're completely overwhelmed, and you bring on the wrong people because you're looking for them to rescue you from the experience you're having at the moment.
Hey, real quick, just to interrupt, I'm kind of dumb. So I'm actually over here Googling the word fawn to make, because I'm a redneck. So for me, I'm like, I think little deer, can't shoot the little ones.
It's laying down. Like, you're just accommodating and appeasing.
Okay.
It's pleasing and appeasing. So it's I am going to yes you to avoid conflict.
To avoid conflict. Okay.
Yes, that's fawning. So to change the behavior, what most of us have realized is we're like, okay, well, to change my actions, I got to change my thoughts, feelings, and then my beliefs. So going down through the layers becomes overwhelming. And so we're going to focus on some specific behaviors that will actually allow you to do an action that will change the thoughts, that changes the feelings, that changes the beliefs, rather than having going right to the root. And so this is the easiest way to unlock your potential, by rewiring your brain, because you're hijacking it back for success. And this is about activating your Thrive mind. Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm like, what am I? And it's activating your senses. And this is an absolute game changer, because when people talk about this embodied experience or simply just getting out of your head, we've got to get back into our body. And this particular action is truly at the root of all of these different practices that people teach, from mindfulness to meditation. And all it is for you to just stop and sit. We'll just walk through one exercise really quickly. And what I'd like for you to do is just take 2 fingertips and just rub them together and slow down. Go even slower. And I want you to feel the ridges on each finger. And what is the sensation of each ridge and the resistance? The feeling from each fingertip. And then you can take your 2 hands and put all of your fingertips together and just rub all of your fingertips and try to feel the ridges on every single one. And then you can slowly move your hands and feel the palm of your hand. And what does it feel like from the fingertips and on the palm? And in as little as 10 seconds, you realize, oh, shit, I am out of my head. You cannot focus on the stress and be in survival when you get into your senses. And for the sake of time, that is one tiny little one using the sense of touch. But you can do the same thing with sight, sound, smell, taste. You can, what is the feeling of your toes on the ground and finding all of your toes? And it just quickly gets you out of your head. And you can start building your muscles like a gym and working it out every single day by practicing when you're not stressed. So like first thing in the morning when you're brushing your teeth, what do the bubbles feel like in your mouth? You know, the taste of the mint or the cinnamon or whatever other flavor it is, right? It's engaging your senses and building that habit for you to take control of what you're focusing on rather than being hijacked and focusing on what's wrong all the time. And when you become a master of your mind in that way, you become a master of your actions because you're actually raising your floor and sabotage-proofing your success. Because what you do consistently becomes a pattern, and your patterns become your reputation. So focusing only on what you can control, and in that moment is going to be choosing to focus on your senses to get you out of survival. And the more you do it when you're not stressed, it becomes way easier when shit hits the fan for you to be like, whoa, I see you, old story, judge, controller, whatever, jumping in to hijack me. I see you. So let me stop and do this instead. So I can take control of me and hijack back the outcomes I want to create and letting go of the rest. So for those of you who would like access to this slide deck and some additional bonus resources to help you be able to focus on what you can control and let go of the rest, I highly recommend heading over to vipstacy.com or scan the QR code.
Excelente.
Thanks. Well,
thank you so much.
You are welcome. Yeah, we are super pressed for time. So
we're doing good. We got a few minutes.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions, go ahead and drop them in there for Stacy.
Yes.
Feel free to drop them in there. I have one question. I'm curious. So in the effort of raising my floor, right, one of the things that I've done is I made a decision, right? I was like, hey, I'm not happy with my weight. I'm not happy with my level of health. I'm not in the shape that I want to be in to accomplish certain goals in my life. So I've been busting my ass at the gym, right? I get up every morning, go get about an hour and a half workout. And then now I'm also doing about another 2 hours at night, a couple of times a week, 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay.
When you're working on changing those behaviors, right? And you're trying to create a new behavior that's a better behavior to raise your floor. I guess my question is, where do you draw the line of like, hey, I'm diving in instead of procrastinating, for example, on my health, I am now flighting away from not doing anything. And now I'm pouring myself into an addiction that's working out. So, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but I feel like there's kind of a balance in there. Like, how do I still maintain my balance mentally and not over hustle or switch gears into one of these other modes?
So to kind of go to answering your question from earlier too, of like high functioning versus high performance, this is exactly a great example where most of us, when we're in this high functioning survival of all of these control issues, we are very all or nothing. So we are all into the new thing, which there's a lot of addictive or extreme behaviors we can have as a method of coping. And all it is, it doesn't matter if this is a seemingly healthy, like nutrition or exercise, or unhealthy, like alcohol or work. What it is understanding we're utilizing something external to change how we're feeling inside. And most of the time, that external thing is what we're focusing on so we can avoid what's happening internally.
Right.
And so if that exercise thing becomes so extreme, you're avoiding, you're using that activity to, again, basically numb out or avoid what's going on, right? I see this a lot with, that stress response. It's keeping yourself in check. And those repetitions of the muscle of being able to flip yourself into that thrive mind are going to help you see what's really happening from this 30,000 foot view, because you can't work on your shit when you're in your shit. And if you're in it because you're down here reacting, you're never going to be able to take that 30,000 foot view and be able to work on it and on yourself.
Outstanding. Good stuff, man. This is great stuff. A lot of great comments. I don't see any other questions coming in, and we are running up on the hour. So I want to be respectful not only of all the viewers, but certainly your time as well, because I know you're a very busy lady. How many of you guys would like to have Stacy back on the show? Or maybe on Wednesday? Because if there was anything, I would love to dive into your story more.
Yeah.
You had me absolutely captivated talking about your situation in Kuwait, lead driver, rescue mission, like all of this. I'm like, what? Like, I want to hear more of that. I mean, not that this wasn't valuable, but like I was super captivated. I was like, keep going. Keep telling me more about this rescue mission. This is awesome. So we'd love to definitely have you back on the show and certainly dive into this topic more.
Yeah, I would love to be able to, answer the questions and really dive into kind of the practical application of all of this information. So, but thank you guys so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you again. Guys, head over to VIPstacy.com, get those slides, learn some more, connect with her, and let's raise your floor. And until then, we'll see you next time on Tuesday Training. Have a great one.